Jackson Radio Show.
What's up, everybody? Kevin Jackson here. They are blaming this Parkland shooting on toxic masculinity. Did you hear me? Toxic masculinity. If I ever start a boy band, that's what I'm going to call it. Toxic masculinity. My, bye, but don't want no women around. Toxic masculinity. Oh my goodness, what about toxic femininity? Is there such a thing? Can such a thing exist? You know, I was looking at the feminist movement and what it's evolved into. The feminist in America used to be women who said, my husband is going to respect me as a woman, respect our children, be a good family man, blah, blah, blah. Now it's become the hairy armpit crowd, you know, who do nothing except sit around hanging with each other, promoting the L of the LGBT situation and complaining about men, the misandrists of the world that hate men. Toxic masculinity. Toxic femininity is what's ruined America. What's ruined the world. I was watching some movie. What was it? I can't remember what it was, but it was like all the guys in this film were just dumb, and the woman was the one who was the best with the martial arts thing. You know what it was? It was one of these Marvel Comics things. And the girl beat up a bunch of dudes because she was the martial arts instructor. And don't misunderstand me. I've worked out with some martial arts instructor females who are bad to the bone. Absolutely will destroy the average dude. But they can't beat the baddest guys in the dojo. They just flatly can't. And I know some very, very amazing martial arts women. Really do. Anyway, toxic masculinity is what they're blaming this on. So there was a story that's been circulating. Why didn't the police shoot Nicholas Cruz? And Constitution.com reported this. They said for the last week or so, the entire nation has been talking about gun control, or at least the media has. The sudden tsunami of gun control stories, articles, op-eds, and segments is a result of the terrible mass shooting that took place at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Sadly, the focus on gun control has caused the media and the people who get their news from the media to miss the far larger scandal revolving around Douglas High School. So here's what they go on to talk about. Now they're not talking about the officers who didn't run into the building and all this other stuff. They're not talking about the scandal at the FBI about who knew about Nicholas Cruz and his desires for mayhem and violence. They write this. The story begins 6 years ago in Miami-Dade County, just south of Broward, where the school district was struggling to succeed. And all of the data painted a picture of a failing school district. The district noticed that larger portions of the school populations were being arrested at a higher proportion than the rest of their community. And they realized that if they could cut down on the criminality of their students, they could improve the data coming out of their schools. Now, this isn't just happening in Miami, Broward, and all that. Keep this in mind. I talked about this in Chicago schools where they say we can't put any more, the bad marks, if you will, on black folks, black kids in school. When you reach the threshold, you must stop. So back to this article, it says the district entered into a relationship with local police and concluded a deal that would ensure that the police would stop arresting many of their students. Within a year or two, surrounding communities began to notice the change in Miami-Dade's fortune, which included a new influx of money. And Broward County decided it was time they entered into a similar deal with the local police force. What I'm telling you, folks, is the leftists cook the books. There's more crime in schools than you can imagine. There's more crimes in communities than gets reported. They cooked the books with the police. For what? Tax dollars. So the Broward County School Board and the district superintendent entered into a political agreement with Broward County's law enforcement officials to stop arresting students for crimes. And the motive was simple. The school systems administrators wanted to improve their statistics. They would get state and federal grant money from the improvements therein. So cooking the books meant more dollars. Doesn't mean there was less crime. Doesn't mean, for example, when they cook the books and tell you, hey, our students come to class, they graduate. They cook the books on the grades. They cook the books on attendance. All to get money and to pretend that the students are better for it. Students are getting less education. They're in a much more dangerous environment, and the schools continue to get money thrown at them. He says in the article, it's important to remember this was not an arbitrary change. It was a well-planned, fundamental shift in the entire dynamic of how teenagers would be treated when they engaged in criminal conduct. Now, that's going to make a lot more sense here in a little bit. I want you to consider. A kid goes out, he does something, commits a crime, and it starts out as just misdemeanors. You know, shoplifting this, minor vandalism, things like that. We talked about it the other day. And the police excuse these behaviors. But then they start excusing felonies, violent crimes, assault, armed robbery, far worse. I mentioned it the other day. A lot of girls are actually raped at school. Now, you can see how this is going to cause problems, because it's one thing to overlook the small things, but as we've learned, if you pay much attention to criminal justice, people tend to escalate. If there are no consequences, they say, well, they'll let me do this, maybe I'll try this. And they keep ratcheting it up. So, once a system seems to be working, the district needed the police to continue lowering arrests year over year. So the police were being forced to excuse more and more criminal acts that were increasing in severity. You can understand this problem's not going to go away. If I'm getting away with one thing and you let me, and then there's no consequence, and I get away with it again and again and again, I'm going to go, you know what? This is pretty much a license to steal, pardon the pun. So in the years that followed, youth crime in Miami-Dade and Broward is growing steadily worse. And an odd quota system developed. And once a certain number of high school students had been arrested in the county, leadership would make sure that the other crimes that were committed were being excused. Exactly what happened in Chicago. By the way, if you think this is limited to Miami-Dade and Broward County and Cook County area, you are sadly mistaken. This is going on all over the country. Once educators find out how to get money, they send out the bell, ding, 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 ding. Everybody starts cashing in. And that's exactly what's happened. So, they commit more crimes. They begin planning their biggest, more important activities later in the month, later in the quarter, at times when schools were collecting their data for reporting. And in this way, gangs could take advantage of committing crimes at a time when police would be most likely to give high school age kids a pass. You follow? It's kind of like when you buy a car and they say, do you buy the car at the first of the month? No, you wait until the end of the month. Do you buy a car in the middle of the year? No, you wait until the end of year, model year clearance. That's when you buy. That's when you get the best deal. These kids, these gangbangers, everybody knows exactly when they hit that quota number. And they say, that's it. So that's what's happened here, folks. You're finding out what's really, going on with this school shooting. These guys were, I'm not saying they were at the quota number and they went, okay, well, we got to let this guy kill and we'll be able to sweep it under the rug. But you got a police system, a corrupt system now that's in cahoots with the school, and they're going, do we go in? What do we do to this guy? How are we going to cover this up? Look, I don't know all the details around this, but what I'm telling you is it escalated to this point. If you wonder why these 4 deputies are supposedly waited outside of the school watching Nicholas Cruz go in and start shooting and still not go in, this is probably a pretty good indicator. This guy continues, with the intricate nature of the relationship between the police and schools, it became vital that the school resource officers placed at schools understood how the symbiotic relationship between the district and the police was supposed to work. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. They needed these school resource officers who were adept at ensuring that criminal activities of the students would not be reported as crimes and endanger the district's political and financial futures. It is these guys are liaisons between the money, is what it amounts to. So this demonized student resource officer, school resource officer, Scott Peterson, who stood outside the school, probably refused to share information on the shooter and social services back in 2016 for exactly the reason I just explained.
Kevin Jackson
on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.